Bloomington has gotten a taste of multiple seasons this week. Fall, winter, and of course, basketball. Today we'll be on the women's side of things. With just one returning starter to the lineup, there is plenty of turnover for head coach Terry Morin. So far, they don't care, as the Hoosiers are off to a 3-0 start as we hit the middle of November. I'll be joined by three expert panelists this evening as we break down everything you need to know for this season. Stick around because we have a great show coming up on the Toss-Up. Welcome into the Toss-Up. I'm your host this evening, Jet Garrett. Alongside me, women's basketball reporters from all over the place here in Indiana. Dylan Beach and Chase Sotsky, who are covering the team with the Hoosier Network, and IUSTV's very own Grace Jeffert. Tonight, we're going to dive into the roster turnover Coach Morin is facing this season, the difference in physicality, and even highlight some key matchups and teams in the Big Ten this season. How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing good, Jet. Happy to be here, man.
It's awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I want to start the show, Dylan, with you. There is a complete roster makeover this season. I mean, you lose so many players. You bring back just Shea Chesky alone. What is going to change this season? What have you seen so far in the first three games with Indiana's play style?
Yeah, I think where that kind of starts, Jet, is the tempo this year. I think in the past, these Indiana teams are really known for their skill, their three-point shooting, maybe rather than their athleticism, their speed, but they went out in the portal and they got some of those athletes that can really go out, push the tempo. You got Big Z in the middle who can really run the floor well as a center. But you also got guards that can actually push out, make their own shot in transition, beat someone off the bounce. And I don't think this Indiana team has had that for a couple of seasons now, but you have real athletes, and I think that's what you got to look forward to if you're an Indiana fan.
You really saw it. I mean, even going back to the exhibition game, this team wants to get the ball out. I've seen a lot of 7 seconds or less as well on the shot clock. A lot of that, Grace, will go to you, Shea Chesky. She's back. She's the returning starter for this team. She's the leader of this team. What is her importance to this roster, especially with all the turnover?
I mean, going into this season, we knew she was going to have to be the one to step up, the returning starter, And it's no surprise that she's asked about in every single press conference this year. And Coach Terry has also told the press and everyone how important she is to this team. It's a very new, very young team, and she's the one that everyone's looking up to on and off the court. And her minutes, too, as well. She played in all 40 minutes against Marshall, and she also recorded her first career double-double. So she plays quick. She plays versatile. She's looking for the shots underneath the basket as well as beyond the arc. Shameless plug there for our new social segment.
Check it out.
But she is the one who is going to need to be that leader just because that's what the team needs, being so young.
I mean, she's shooting 53% from the field this season. She's averaging 23.3 points per game. And that minutes per game you mentioned, 35 minutes per game right now for Shea Chesky. Chase, I'll turn it over to you. Going into that Marshall game, the turnovers, it had felt like it had been fixed. Last season they averaged 14 a game. It looked like it had been fixed. Tuesday night against Marshall, they have 28 turnovers, the most they've had since 2016. Is that a concern for you?
I mean, absolutely. Coach Morin was not so happy in the press conference after that game. She emphasized that she expects to see a lot of press coverage after the way that teams will now view the way that Indiana handles the press coverage. But one thing that I noticed was in Friday's matchup against UIC, they only had 8 turnovers in that game. The entire time, essentially, UIC was in a full-court man pressure. In Tuesday's game against Marshall, they were in a full-court zone pressure. That's something that maybe is going to be a difficulty for Indiana going forward. Maybe they'll see a lot more zone as opposed to man pressure. But, a lot of these turnovers, they had 28 turnovers, as you said, the most since December of 2016, almost a decade ago. That is something that Terry Morin is going to want to crack down on. That's something that they all talked about in the press conference after the game, and that's definitely a huge concern going forward.
And it's obviously, it's kind of these first time of these players playing together, and they're still figuring it out. But these early starts and kind of closing out games, I think it's been a real issue. continuing with the roster turnover, the roster makeover, if you will, who is a player this season, Chase, that maybe Indiana fans don't know, but they should know?
Yeah, so Beach, you mentioned this just a second ago, Big Z, Zania Soka-Nagumo. She's a transfer from UCLA. Last year, she had averaged about 5 minutes per game on a loaded UCLA roster. She's now transferred in to Indiana and putting up big minutes when it matters most. Last week, Terry Morin mentioned a lot about leadership. This whole offseason, leadership has been the big focal point. Relationships, this new team, they need to mesh well together in order to perform. And she said that even though she's new to this team, she wasn't here last year, she's not a returning player, Zania Soka-Nagumo, what she's been able to do as a leader has been flawless, effortless. Her impact has been tremendous. She's already averaging over 17 points a game on the season, has 2 double-doubles already on the year in just 3 games. She's been a phenomenal force on the defensive end. One thing to be a little wary of is the foul trouble. She's had a couple battles with that so far early this season, but she's a big presence on the floor, and I mean that literally. Her presence is felt on both sides of the ball, getting it down into her in the post, and even just being able to make opponents miss layups. She's been doing that all year so far. It's just 3 games, but that's something to keep your eye on.
I think you saw it last night, her presence, because when she went out in that first quarter and you saw how poorly Indiana performed, she comes back in, she scores the first 5 points of that second quarter. I want to turn to you, Grace. Other concerns, something that Coach Morin has really harped on. They want to play aggressive, but they don't want to foul. There have been some moments that Indiana has fouled early. You talk about it with Big Z. She goes out with the 2 fouls early on last night, and it had an immediate effect. Is the foul trouble something that you think that, is going to be a problem?
Here's the thing. It is really early on in the season, and you do have to remember that this is a young team. They're still trying to, figure out how they're working together and how they're defending, how that works the best for them. I'm not too concerned with it just because I do feel like it shows their effort and their intensity. And while they have gotten those early fouls, it's not like they've continued throughout the whole game. They've been able to kind of stabilize those, especially in the second half. And I do think, we talked about Z being a liability for fouls, but she did get the 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes against Marshall on Tuesday. But she was also working with limited minutes at UCLA, and so she's coming in, taking on a big role. I think that, she's still just adjusting to those minutes, as are the rest of the team, because they're very young and new. So I don't think it's too concerning, and I think it will improve as the season goes on.
And Z, 28 minutes per game right now. She's almost averaging a double-double on the year. You mentioned she's already got 2 this season. Beach, before we get to the break, I want to turn it to you. And we cannot go any longer without talking about Big Z. It's almost like we haven't talked about her the entire show. Indiana is averaging over 40 rebounds per game so far this season. They're out-rebounding opponents by about 9. They out-rebound Marshall by 16 last night, even with Z going to the bench. What has changed there with the rebounding numbers?
We're going to be a broken record once again because it's Big Z. I don't know what you want me to ask. Chase is talking about her. She's talking about her. It's Big Z. Last year, this team, they were all right in rebounding in the non-com, but then you get to Big Ten, and you're dead last in rebounding in the Big Ten. You're a middle-of-the-pack team, but you're 18th in rebounding. That is just not acceptable. But you go out, you get a player like Big Z. You get Noyan off the bench, who's a good rebounder. But Big Z, a bona fide double-double threat. Every time she steps on the floor, she's not even playing a lot of minutes. She's getting into that foul trouble early, but you got her in the middle rebounding, and that takes a lot of the pressure off everyone else to rebound too. Like we saw Shea Chesky get 10 rebounds last night. Who's clearing that up? It's on those long misses when there's a good box up by your center. That's how your point guard gets 10 rebounds.
I tell you what, Zanaya and Chesky, they're proving that ZNC is more just a really nice eatery to go on a Friday night. Coming up after the break, we'll take a deeper look at Indiana's roster and highlight some pivotal games on the Hoosier schedule. Maybe we can even get a Big Ten prediction from the panel. All of this when we come back. Welcome back to the toss-up. There has not been a repeat regular season champion in the Big Ten since Maryland did it from 2019 to 2021. With Juju Watkins sidelined with an injury this season, we're going to open it up to the board. Do you guys see USC repeating in the Big Ten this year?
Not a chance. They don't have Juju Watkins. That's the difference. I think it's going to run through one of the new Pac-12 teams, though, and it's going to stay in LA with UCLA. I mean, that is a loaded team. They've got the best height in the conference. I just don't know there's anyone that can slow that size down in this Big Ten slate.
What they're doing out west, I mean,
It's ridiculous.
UCLA, it's unbelievable. Grace?
I'm going to try to play a little devil's advocate here because I feel like, the West Coast teams are getting a lot of hype, as they should. But what about Maryland, too? I mean, think about it. They've got a lot of solid returners. They've got a lot of solid incoming transfers, They've got Yard and Garzone, unfortunate for Indiana, but that's going to be a real asset to them. And they've got Coach Brenda Fries, she's had consistent teams in the past, and they've never really fallen off as well. So I feel like they could be a threat as well.
I mean, we mentioned Maryland. They were the last team to go back-to-back, so, I mean, obviously it'd be obvious if they're the one to end it. Chase?
Grace, I'm really happy you took Maryland because now I don't feel bad going UCLA as well with Beach. I think they've just returned so many players from last year who are extremely successful, extremely well fit to play with one another. Last year, they were the team who went the furthest out of the Big Ten. They went to the Final Four, the only Big Ten team to do just that. They lost to UConn, but that's, besides the point for the Big Ten standings. UCLA is just, they're a powerhouse right now. I don't see it going anywhere else.
I think that's totally fair. And Indiana will play all three of those teams this season, so that takes me to my next question. We'll start with you here, Chase. What's one game that Indiana should have circled this year in Big Ten play?
It's early. There's a lot of questions with this team, especially about how well they'll play together. The first big test is Illinois. It's in Illinois, and I think that has to be a big red circle. How will Indiana take their season so far leading up into that game and head out in their first Big Ten matchup and show up as a team? That's going to be a big question. Their first big test is this week against Florida State. It's uncertain how they're going to play in that game. If they play the way they did against Marshall, it could get ugly fast. But there's a long time between now and when they play against Illinois, and that Illinois game's the first one on the Big Ten slate, and I think that has to be the biggest circle so far this season.
And if you're able to go in and start your season out with a road win, against a team maybe evenly matched as you, I think that's a great start. Grace?
Well, for me, it's kind of a double circle thing going on because February 13th, they travel to California where they're taking on USC. And then on the 15th, they're taking on UCLA. So two really big teams. That's going to be a huge competition for them. But I do think they have the advantage with playing UCLA second, having already been there for a couple days, It's going to be a huge test, but I think that in terms of them being back-to-back, that it could be beneficial to them as well.
If you're able to split that and you can take, one of those two, I think you're feeling pretty good about the road trip. Dylan?
I wanted to originally go with one of the two Purdue games this year, just in the fact that Indiana's in a bit of a rebuild. It projects to be a bit closer of a contest this year, but I think you got to circle that game going to Maryland. I mean, there was already a bit of bad blood between the programs. It always felt like it was kind of a fierce, chippy matchup, but then you stack on top of it Yard Garzone, transferring in conference, going to Maryland, who Indiana got to consider a rival when they were in their heyday for those title chases. That one's going to have some bad blood in it. I'm looking forward to that one a lot, Jet.
Personally, I love that as well, by the way. I want a little flair with my sports. I'm looking forward to that Michigan game. I think it's at the end of January, and so, you'll have a pretty good idea of where you're at or starting your push into the month of March. One more question for the board before we get out of here. I want to start with you, Grace. It's a question everyone wants to know. Where will Indiana finish in the Big Ten this season, according to you?
Well, I'm going to have to say somewhere in the middle of the pack. It's just because we haven't played those conference games yet, and there are really, really talented teams. It's really just going to come down to, it's hard because of the Marshall score being so close, so I can't exactly feel as confident in them as I was, maybe those first two games. So in the exhibition game when they put up 100 points to Missouri's 32. So I feel like it's going to be somewhere more in the middle.
I think that's totally fair. I think the Marshall game, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I think the Marshall game was a little offsetting. Chase?
Yeah, it's definitely offsetting. I kind of agree. I think somewhere in the middle of the pack, maybe middle lower of the pack. The Big Ten is loaded this year, as per usual in women's basketball. I think that probably around the 11-12 range is where Indiana settles. I think that they're going to be able to pull out some big wins. Shea Chesky, she's got that it factor. Everything you want in a player, she has. She's got leadership. She's got it on offense. She has the grit on defense that can really make a spark out of nothing. And I think that she'll be able to lead this team. Some players will be stepping up throughout the year. It's a young roster. There will be times where it's going to look rough like it did against Marshall. There are going to be times where it's going to look great like it did against UIC. I think that there's going to be some big wins. There's going to be some bad losses. But all in all, I think they'll probably be around the 11-12 range in the Big Ten.
And I think anytime you have Shea Chesky on a floor, I mean, she proved that against UIC in the second half. She had 25 points. Anytime you have her on the floor, you're in any game, in my opinion. Dylan, we'll close it with you.
Okay, yeah, 6:55 yesterday. I was ready to come on here and say this team could at least match their Big Ten standings from a year ago. At 7:10 during that first quarter, I had thrown that out the window. I think it's somewhere in that 10 to 14 range maybe this year. It's going to be a rebuilding process. You have the pieces to kind of start laying that foundation. You got a really good recruiting class for next year, and this team's going to be so volatile, and the way they want to play is going to be that fast basketball, and it can work in the Big Ten, but there are a lot of questions against a zone, against a press after last night. I just can't come in here and say they're going to finish about like they did last year.
Yeah, again, that game last night, I mean, that was one of the performances.
A basketball game.
That does it for the show this week. I want to thank our three panelists so much for coming on and joining me this evening. Be sure to continue the discussion and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports. With that, there's only one thing left to do. So toss it up, find out if we catch it, and we'll see you next week.